Hi, everybody. My name is Adjetey Anang, and a third generation coffin maker. So this is kind of where my grandfather, the one who started the whole idea of design coffins. And this was the whole idea. This was what they were being used for. It is a palanquin, and that's what the Ghana chiefs ride in them during festivals and derbes. Until in 1951, he had to build one in the shape of a cocoa pot for a chief to ride in. But unfortunately, the chief passed away. So he had to convince the relatives of the chief so they could use the palanquin as a coffin. Because normally when they pass away, no one uses the palanquin. The next chief has to, request for a different one or something. So this chief was buried in a coffin in the shape of a cocoa pot. People thought he was, a chief, so he was special. That was why something like that was used. Until in somewhere around 52, when they were building the Kotoka International Airport in Accra, which is like 10 minutes drive away from us. So there is this great grandmother of mine who was always dreaming of, riding in a plane one of these days, but she never got to do it. So this was the kind of coffin my granddad made for her. So she was buried in this. We live close to the ocean, and we have all these fishermen and stuff. So eventually, when people started to go to my grandfather to commission for pieces in the shape of a fish and a canoe and stuff for their deceased relatives, by then we didn't have the mortuary, so we have a very short period. He has a very short period of time to build the coffin. So that was something that also made it so special. He had to build all this within 5 days. So this was, I think, the third piece. Sort of the third piece he made in the form of a canoe for a chief fisherman to be buried in. This is a wooden hammer. I did put this photo because I had to build this for the first time. I knew he built one, but I was very little when he built it. So someone came to the shop and they kind of referred me to what my grandfather did, and they asked me to build something like that. And I was supposed to build this within a week. So I had to organize my crew so we could work on that. So that was the end product. So I was in the shop one time, and this guy from the UK, Idiot Abroad, I don't know if someone knows him, he just, arrived and asked me if I could build him a coffin. I'm like, I could build him a coffin, just let me know. So he wanted me to help him, decide something. So I was like, do you want a camera, plane, or what? So he went to the supermarket and he came back. He had the twist with him, and he asked me to make it like, 2 chambers, so he and the girlfriend could go into it. So this is a fish I built for the Royal Ontario Museum in Canada. So in 2013, I did a workshop in Denmark, Aarhus, Aalborg, and Copenhagen. And it was pretty much difficult for us to find, good food to eat. So this was the kind of food we were surviving on. So I had a way to build something. So this was what I built. And as you know, to ship my pieces abroad, I used to put them in a container. And anytime I put these stuffs in the container, I kind of have to insure, do an insurance for the pieces. But they get broken when they get there. And I don't know how, this happens. And, anytime you're speaking with them, they don't care. So I decided to build something like that and then to put the dollar sign, sort of like, provoke it. This was also in Denmark. Uh, so my dad is a very huge fan of Don Williams. And he loves the country music and the guitars, and he's like, I wouldn't like to go in one of the tools. I would like to go in a wooden, like a guitar. So I kind of tried to build something. He's still alive though, but sometimes I kind of try to build stuff by myself to see how best I can do. That's an elephant in the Houston Museum that was built by my grandfather too. And I'm very influenced. I've been very influenced with your work. So, so after the whole ceremony, this is how the whole coffin ends up. It goes under the ground and then buried. So this guy, lives like 30 minutes away from the shop, and the relatives came to me. I know him by his name. We call pigs Pluto, and they call him Afutu Pluto, meaning, like his real name and then the name of the pig. And his relatives came and they told me they want a coffin in the form of a pig. So I asked them, why? Because, I don't think people would love to be buried in a piece like that. They want a fancy one, something nice and beautiful, but not, pigs are very dirty, so, but from there, my understanding, they told me this guy was the first to have started rearing pigs in the area, so they wanted something that will represent him. I also built a piece for a teacher, so I made the notebook. I usually make the pen, but this time the family wanted something a little more different, so I made the notebook and then the pen. So, 5 years ago they were building a filling station, a gas station close by the shop, and one guy died. One of the guys working there died. So the director of the gas station wanted something that would symbolize what the guy was doing. So we kind of had a couple of discussions, and we finally ended up making him a piece like this. So that's how the inside of the coffins kind of look like. So I put in a white foam, a foam, a very soft foam, and then put in the white fabric and then decorate the inside with the flowers. So I've kind of been making onions, tomatoes, and most of the vegetables. So this time the family came, and I kind of try to make something very new. So this time they told me, if I could, kind of bring some different ideas. So I finally asked them if we could do the box that contained, the tomatoes have been put in. So I kind of showed them. I didn't have a photo by then, but I showed them a photo of, the women bringing the tomatoes from the village, and they actually loved the design. So I built this, and it took me like a month to build this. That's a syringe for a nurse. So that's a ray fish. That's a very challenging one. I met this guy. He's been buying coffins from me. So he came one time and he said, "Hey Eric, the family bought a coffin somewhere. We don't like it. We want a different one. What can you make?" The guy is a fisherman, so I said, "Maybe a fish or something." And he said, "Well, what kind of a fish?" I said, "We could make a red one, like that of the Royal Ontario Museum." And he said, "That's too, we've done a lot of that, so he wants something pretty much unique." So I went on the internet and then I found this photo, I mean, the real fish, and I showed this to him, and he said yes. And I told him, okay, it's going to take us like a month. He said we want it in 5 days. So it took me 3 days to have an idea of how to build it. And then I have to build the whole thing in 2 days and then paint it another 2 days. So I built this in 7 days. And that's one of the unique coffins I've made. I got a message one time from this guy, Alexander Donskoy, and he said, I want to buy all your coffins. I said, I don't have all the coffins. Tell me what you want. He said, can you make me that and this and that, maybe like 5 or 10? I said, yes, I can make that. I mean, I need money. I mean, I can do that. But I checked and I noticed it's difficult to, bring in wood to Russia. So I said to him, hey, maybe I could come to Russia and, do something. And I sent the message like 30 minutes and the guy replied, yes, when do you want to come? I mean, I'm ready to pay everything. So he actually wanted a Coke bottle, a fish, and, whatever. So I went to Russia in the middle of nowhere, Novosibirsk, and I met some friends. I mean, I was working, but at the same time, partying around. So I met some friends, and I realized Russians can drink. And I was also working in a crematorium, so most of the ceremonies that was happening, I mean, most of the funerals were, caused by alcohol. So I said to the guy, hey, I know you want a Coke bottle, but I want to, address an issue. What do you think? And he's like, what's the plan? I said, I want to make a vodka bottle. And he said yes, another crazy one. And I started building this. And, we have the media coming in, and eventually, they put it on the internet, and there were a lot of controversies about it, to the extent that they nearly kicked me out. Yeah, but it became one of the, special pieces for me. Yeah, so the Christians believe being buried in a designed coffin, it's against their religion, because during the ceremonies there are sacrifices of animals and pouring of libations and stuff. So what happens is 5 years ago I brought in this Bible, and then I kind of unfold it, and they really like it. So I think now every year in Ghana I build like maybe 20 or 30 of these for them. That's a pineapple for a pineapple farmer. It's a Coke bottle for someone who works. I did put these photos because earlier people were calling them fantasy coffins, and I really didn't like the idea because these are not fun. People are mourning. Though we jubilate, we celebrate, but we also mourn. We cry. So I kind of didn't get it so much until a couple of few years. People started to come in with, like commissions like cigarettes, alcohol, like beer bottles and stuff. So now that's pretty well. It's working well. So I know after the whole talk, someone is going to ask, do I have my coffin? Yes, this is my coffin. So I have a piece like that in my room, but it's a furniture. But one of these days, if I should pass away in Ghana, that's what I'm going to be buried in. So we have the snail and the tortoise. We say they are very slow, but they usually get to their destination. So we make this for a chief or a lawyer. They might solve your problem, but in a gradual process. Yeah. So that's for, a sailor. Um, I mean, these are some of the new designs I'm kind of trying to bring in. So, when the family comes, I don't only tell them, I don't follow the whole thing they bring, but I kind of also try to bring in a different idea. Uh, Usually, if something like that happens, I usually build like just a normal coffin, and then I make a little sculpture of the um, design on top of it. But this time I wanted, you can see this is very huge. It's like two or three times the normal size of a coffin. So it's for someone who sells fabrics. Uh, that's a seahorse I built 3 years ago for a guy who owns an aquarium in Florida. He's still alive, but he wants to keep it until he passes away. So this is a lobster I built in New Hampshire uh, during my residency there 3 years ago. Thanks to Albert. So, I mean, that's a coffin in the form of house for a contractor, or someone who owns a lot of houses. Like in Ghana, people do invest in buildings and they rent them out, and that's the kind of business a lot of people does. So someone like that could be buried in a piece like that. That's a mother hen. So a coffin like this, a woman who has a lot of children would be buried in a coffin like this, and the number of chicks we put under it tells the number of children the woman has. And this piece is really, really controversial because in Ghana we practice polygamy. So we don't talk so much about the number of children the man has, but the number of children the woman has. So let's assume the man is married to 2 women, and the woman who passes away has like 2 children, and then the man has an extra 2 children. It is either they put 4 chicks under it, and if they should put 4 chicks under it, we don't inherit, we inherit patrilineally. So the family of the deceased wouldn't agree with the chicks, with the 4 chicks. They would prefer only the 2 chicks because the other 2 belongs to the man. But since the woman raised the 4 kids, we sometimes kind of, play around it and then try to make it more of the 4 or something. Oh, okay, that's all. Funerals, in Ghana, is pretty much linked with inheritance. I always say this because we have landowners. When we settled in Teshin, where I come from, the indigenes would not become chiefs. It is the chiefs who goes to fight. So we use strangers as chiefs. So let's say I'm coming from Teshin and you visit me, I could decide you become the head of the house. And the reason is, if there is war, then you have to go and fight. That is how we inherit. And that is how the land issues goes on in Teshin. So now we have landowners, but they are not chiefs. And we have the chiefs. So assuming a chief dies, and they want to bury him in like an eagle, or maybe a snail or a tortoise, the landowners could say, no, you don't own the land, so we won't we won't allow you to be buried in a coffin of that shape on our land. So it's either you take a very simple coffin and then you will be allowed to be buried in the land. And if the landowners also dies, I mean, then they would like to choose, like an eagle, but they are not the leaders too, but they own the land. So then the leader would say, if you use the eagle, then we're going to destroy the coffin during the ceremony. So it is very controversial. I mean, some of the symbols are very linked with our form of inheritance. So I did put a short video, I don't know why it's not there, but I did put a short video where I was invited to the ceremony. And the reason I was invited was they were the landowners and the chiefs were there, so there was a fight. And the chief says, we won't allow you to bury this guy on the land in that coffin. So I said to them, okay, fine. I mean, I'm good at making the eagle. So let me do the eagle and I can bring it. We can agree on everything and the burial is going to take place on the land. But we took the body out of the coffin and the body was buried in the house and we buried just the coffin, the empty coffin, in the cemetery. And the reason was, if we should allow them to bury the person in the eagle, they could go during the night and dig and then get the body out and they could use that for rituals and they would own the land if they should get hold of the body. So, people die, but once they die, they are still very strong. The person who owns the body, basically, is the person who inherits everything. Yeah, I think that's all the videos.